name is Carol Bickford. I was born in Holton, Kansas, and I was born May 10, 1937. Growing up, I was born at a hospital in Holton. In fact, the hospital was in the doctor's home. And my father was a farmer. And growing up, I can remember being small in the country, and we moved to town probably when I started second grade. I had a happy childhood, very happy. I come from a family of 6 girls and 1 boy, so not only did I have a lot of friends, I had a lot of sibling friends also. So we kept each other busy. We liked the country. When we moved to town, we called my dad a city farmer. And I can remember, when I was old enough to help drive a tractor, since my father had no boys at that time, I was probably 12 years old. I learned how to drive a tractor. So at harvest time, which mainly was when he did hay, we either drove the tractor or sit on the back of the little thing that he pulled, and I would poke wires into the machine, and he would sit on the other side and tie the bales off. So that was always fun for me. And then I always liked going out to the farm and helping him, because all I could think, being a teenager, was getting a suntan. And here he'd come in every morning that we were to go out. He'd have this old blue work shirt and this big old straw hat, and my hopes would just go downhill from there. No suntan. But it was a fun time. For fun, what we did, we had a skating ring, and we would go every Saturday night skating. That was a big thing. That was a congregational area that all the young kids went to. We also had a theater that had shows. I can remember Mother giving us 25 cents. That would get us into the show and a bag of popcorn. I took dancing lessons when I was small. I played in the school band. I played a clarinet, and I also played the snare drums. And music had always been a big part of our lives, of our parents' lives, of our grandparents' lives. I haven't played the clarinet in a long time, nor the drums. As a kid, my father played in a band, and I learned how to play the guitar. And I would go to the dances with them, with my mother and my father, and I would play in the band also as rhythm, so that my dad could dance with my mother. And I always liked that. In high school, I played also the accordion, and I played the piano and organ. I was a fairly decent student. I had to study for my grades. I had an older sister that could just not even look at a book and make the honor roll. And I would try my best to get on that honor roll, but somehow I'd always end up with a C on something. My father paid us for our A's and B's, and then if we got anything below that, we had to pay him. So we tried our best to make the honor roll. But I had to study. I had to study hard to get where I wanted my grades. I think the fondest memory probably was going camping with my parents. My dad was a fisherman, and we'd load up the old truck with a tent, and off we'd go. and we always had fun. I can remember going to Tuttle Creek, and I can remember we pitched our tent, and in the middle of the night it rained and rained and rained and rained, and somehow we got in a low part of the ground and our tent filled with water and the whole thing. We got wet that night. And also on that camping trip, I might add this, our husbands, we went out there with my sister and her family, and we had small children, and the smallest probably was, or the oldest was probably 12, and the husbands had went out and set trout lines, and they left early. Well, they left late at night and come back to Holton to go to work the next day, and my sis and I was to run the trout lines. So we decided at 2 o'clock in the morning, we woke up the oldest child to babysit while we went out and run their lines. Well, somehow we tied white rags to tree limbs so we wouldn't get lost, and we run out of gas. And here we were fretting because we have a bunch of kids back at the campground with no parent there. And so we were hollered, help, help, help. Finally, some fishermen that were fishing at 2 o'clock in the morning finally found us on that lake and towed us in. So that was a big experience and a scary one. But when we went out and run the trout lines in the next morning, we had a 57-pound catfish. So it was all worth it. To be right honest, I was a bad girl. I went 6 weeks of my senior year and I had 1 1/4 credit left to graduate. But I thought getting married was more important. So my husband and I will be married 60 years in October. We ran off and got married. Well, I had planned on finishing school and the whole thing, and when we came back, my husband was working on one of the schoolhouses and fell off the roof. Broke his ankle, so it was either starve or go to work. So I went ahead and went to work, and I finished up my high school then in 1971. I was going to go back earlier than that, but I didn't want to embarrass our children. And our son was in algebra then, and I thought, well, I'll take it with him. And he said, oh, Mother, how embarrassing. So I opted not to do anything at that time. But there was 13 of us that went back and got our high school diploma. And we went before the school board and we took a GED test, and the school board approved giving us a Holton High School diploma. So that was a big accomplishment for me. I know my dad had passed away that year, and I know that made him happy. I was a stay-at-home mother when the children were born. We had 3. My husband didn't want me to work, and really I didn't want to work at that point. And then when they started school, what jobs I had corresponded with the school hours. So when the kids were out of school, I was home. When the school was out for summer, I was home. So that worked out fine. And then when they reached junior high, we were living in Holton then, and I decided I had been asked to run for office of the Register of Deeds for Jackson County. So that meant out campaigning. So I opted to do that, and I was Jackson County Register of Deeds for 25 years. I'm real proud of this. I was the first person as a Democrat to have that office more than one term. And as you can figure out, that is a Republican county. And I can remember my grandmother saying, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing, Carol, going out on a Democrat ticket where everything's Republican here?" And I said, "Well, grandmother, you'll know I worked hard if I get it." And lo and behold, my people did vote for me, plus a heck of a lot of Republicans. So I was real proud, and they stood by me for 25 years. Your campaigning was on your own, and you know, you hit every soup supper, you hit every fair around the county. And I can remember campaigning, we had the parade at Holton, and it was over the 4th of July. And I had a truck, and I put a rocking chair in the back of it, and signs all over the front and the sides, and I filled it with my grandchildren, all of them towheads. And I had little shirts on them that said, "Please vote for my grandma." And I sit in the rocking chair holding the last baby. And then behind that, a couple floats. I also had a float with a flatbed trailer. And I filled that trailer with my nieces and nephews, and I had a lot of them. And I had signs around it that says, "Stick with my Aunt Carol." And then I had people walking, handing out bubble gum. So that was a fun time, and it was fun for the kids. To be right honest, the job I had then I didn't like, and that was working for my husband. You might laugh at that, but we had a floor covering business, and you know, when people come in to purchase flooring or wall covering or whatever, you know, they would want it right now. You know, they were going to go home and lay that floor. So I was on the floor and pulling out 12-foot goods, cutting it, and it was hard work. It was really, really hard work. And you hate to have the customer do it, and they wouldn't want to wait for one of the tile men to come in to do it. So the Democrat Party came and asked me if I would run. And after, you know, visiting with my husband with it, I wasn't too sure, because I felt like I was running out on him. And he said, "No problem, we'll just hire somebody and you can teach them what you want in here and go for it." So that's what I did, and I loved the 25 years that I had as Register of Deeds. It was a good job. My husband worked out of state a lot during their growing up time. So a lot of the responsibility was solely on me, and I think they all ended up pretty good. And I keep thinking, you know, I'm so proud of my children and my grandchildren that I must have done something right. But I don't know, when you just come right down to it, I had good kids. I really did. Leo and I, you know, we had rules, and you know, they had to have privileges taken away from them if they didn't mind. I wasn't really a mother that spanked their children. We just had a good communication between each other, and a lot of love, a lot of love. And I don't think there was anything that they couldn't come home and tell me. I wanted to make sure we had an open conversation on everything. Grandpa and I have conflicting stories about how we met. But he said he met me at a restaurant called Naughty Pine. And I did work there. It was a restaurant and it was a big hangout for kids and grown-ups. And my cousin owned it and run it. And when he'd get short of help, well, then he'd call one of my sisters or myself to come help out. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But I don't remember meeting my husband down there. I know he was in there, but I really didn't know him at the time because he'd been away to service, and he's like 4.5 years older than I am. I knew his two brothers in school. One was in my class and one was ahead of me. But there was also another hangout, and that was on Saturday nights. Besides the skating, there was the VFW, and they had teen dances and young adults. And he came in with my girlfriend's boyfriend. And that's really how I met him, was that way, because he come in and said, "I'm going to marry you." And I thought he was full of wind, but it's been a good marriage. We've been married 60 years. Well, it's a lot of push and shove and a lot of give and take. And, you know, I've given a lot, more so than him, because he had to retire at 55 because of health reasons. So, you know, there's a lot of slack that I had to pick up, but it's been worth it. You know, I keep telling him I'm going to keep him. So, my dad died in 1971. My dad was a happy person. Always just smile. Everybody knew him. He was everybody's friend. He was a hard worker. And, you know, he'd work from daylight to dark. And he always made things fun for us. He was a good father, good provider. My mother is still living at 99 years old. Mother, I don't know how she did it. There was 7 children, 6 girls, and the last one was a boy. I know she had to give up a lot. Being a mother myself, I know she gave up a lot to give to us. I never heard her complain at all, anytime, ever. We tried not to get out of hand, and I can remember my father had a little razor strap. When he would shave, he'd sharpen his blade on it, you know, and it had a little tiny hole in the end of it. And boy, if we got out of line, Mother got that little tiny piece of leather and whopped across our legs. So that straightened us up pretty fast. Not that she was mean, but that was punishment. But, you know, Mother made a lot of cookies, a lot of baked goods. And I think now, raising a family myself, with 9 people sitting down at the table every meal, oh my goodness, did she ever get tired of frying chicken? It's just unreal. I couldn't do it. And she had to be totally exhausted at night. But she was a good mother. And she had a lot of crafts. She did crocheting, she did knitting, sewing. She made our clothes when we grew up, when we were small. So she kept busy. Everybody was welcome to the house. Not only did she have our friends, like one of the kids was sick one time and they made house calls, the doctors did. He came down at mealtime and he says, "It smells good in here. Where's an extra chair? I'm going to pull up to the table and eat with you." And that's what he did. I mean, back then, it was just like that. Your doctor was really your friend. I always wanted to travel, and we always took a vacation, a 2-week vacation. That's one thing my husband said. You know, he worked hard all year. He was, that 2 weeks we were going on a trip. And it was always a trip in the car, of course. And it was usually to a different state. And when the grandchildren then started coming around with a little age on them, usually at that time we had 6 grandchildren. We would take them 2 at a time when they were 12 years old and take them on our vacation. And that was a wonderful time. I mean, the kids had time to play and reconnect with us, and we had time to reconnect with them on a one-on-one basis. But I mean, it was like 6 Flags over Texas, 6 Flags over St. Louis. We went to Idaho, we went to Canada with 2 of them, and Idaho with 2 of them. We went to Old Mexico with 2 of them. And when we went to Old Mexico, I worried about that, taking them out of the country. But they're 2 little 12-year-olds, both of them blonde, tow-headed kids, and I had to smile at this. Walking through this flea market thing that we went, they would come and pat them on the head, and the boys couldn't understand, why are they touching us? Why are they touching us? You know. And I didn't know why. Come to find out, I finally asked, why all the touching? And they told me that down there, if you touched a blonde-headed child on the head, that brought you good luck. So I told the boys, I says, you made a lot of people happy down here. But it was always a good time with the grandkids, always, always. My hobbies, well, everybody kind of laughs at me. And at least I have a husband that kind of backs me on this. But I tell everybody I'm going through my second childhood because I make American Girl doll clothes. I have had an interest in sewing all my life. And I used to make cheerleading outfits for our girls when they were in high school. But I made them for the whole squad. Now I think everything is purchased, but I don't know. It seems like all my great nieces and nephews talk about the American Girl doll. And here a few years ago, they only had 3 stores in the States, which was California, Chicago, and New York. And our son, of course, and his wife are in California, and when we went out to visit, I said to my daughter-in-law, I'd like to go to that store and see what this is. So we go up there, and to my amazement, I couldn't believe my eyes. Just dolls everywhere, and families everywhere, carrying these dolls and purchasing this and that and this and that. They even had a restaurant that blew my mind. Here's the mother and daddy sitting with their little child with their doll beside them. So I told my daughter-in-law, I says, there must be money in this. I says, I think I'm going to go home and make American Girl doll clothes. So on the way home, back to her place, she said, you're not going no place unless you make one here. So we went and got a pattern and got some material, and we went home, and I sewed this dress up. And she said, we're going to put that online on the computer. And I said, oh, Paula, nobody's going to buy that. And lo and behold, the next morning when I checked my computer to check the kids in Kansas, here it said I had a message. And some man from Sweden saw that online and purchased it. it just about blew my mind, but it really got me involved. So that's what I do for my fun at home. Oh, the biggest lesson I have learned, I think believing in God and to be respectful. And I know I've been ornery, I know I've said mean things, but I try not to be hurtful, even if I disagree with something. I don't know, there's a lot of lessons, you know, how to be a good mother. And it's like I tell my kids, and I just told my 99-year-old mother this last week. I said, Mother, your life is what you make it. And that's what I've always told our kids. My grandchildren, what advice can I give them? I don't know. Just be happy. Tell each other you love each other every day. The world has changed so in the way we do things from when I was young. And, you know, be kind to each other. And family means a lot. So someday you're going to know what a parent really is. And I tell my children, and I also tell their children, is a mother and a father is always going to be a mother and a father to their children. No matter how old they get, you're always going to be telling them to do something. And hopefully they'll smile at you and either do it or do it their way, one of the two. But, you know, let them know how loved they are.